I'm Oprah as a dude, and I love you all. All right, here we go. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another fantastic episode of the Reyes Reflection podcast. As you can see, it is our Halloween episode. Please follow me on those socials at I'm Nathanael Reyes. Customarily, I have to talk about those partners that allowed this show to happen. ARAVE cards, completing sets, one card at a time. Get yourself going on your Pokemon card collection today. Jocko Fuel, clean fuel without compromise. Use promo code REYESREFLECTION to save. Who doesn't like a good discount? Mad Rabbit, be bold, be you. Again, make sure you use that promo code REYESREFLECTION, REYES, and everyone knows how to spell reflection. If you don't, you can Google it. And lastly, SMACKIN sunflower seeds. Get yourself a sample pack using my exclusive link in my link tree. Now that is out of the way, in this episode, we have an incredible guest who brightened a lot of lives for a lot of young children and families across the globe. You may remember her as the grab your motion lotion person. She's vibrant, energetic, and the engaging host of Gisele's Big Backyard. That's right. Today we have the incredible Gisele Corinthios. Welcome to the pod.
Thank you. I love that intro.
In the intro, I brought up the motion lotion, and we'll talk about your show and all that fun stuff that you did. What was that? Was that just a little thing that you did to get the kids getting ready to move? Is that
Yeah, it was just to get them, our whole thing with, with our show was really about, it's funny. It was a TV show for, it was on air for 18 years. It was The Nook, then Gisele's Big Backyard. And when you're talking about motion lotion, you're referring to Motion Minute, which was to get the kids off of the couch. And that was our whole thing. It was kind of like get off the couch, go outside, which is kind of funny because it was a TV show, but we were always encouraging kids to get up, go outside, have fun. There was a lot of that theme throughout, throughout the many years of the show airing. And so Motion Minute was just part of that. It was getting up off the couch and getting some movement into you. And we do that through acting out things like, be a milkshake or, be a fire truck and, move around like a fire truck. And so the motion lotion was at the start of that little segment called Motion Minute, and would ask kids to rub on their motion lotion, and then the minute on the clock would start, and I'd get the kids up and moving for a minute for many, many years. So many, many hours, actually, not just minutes, but yeah.
That's awesome. I remember Nickelodeon used to do a day of play, which is when they would not broadcast anything throughout the day.
Yeah.
And it would allow children and families to be able to go outside and play. It sounds like we need to bring that back. I don't know. Maybe I'm old school, but I feel like we need to bring that back.
Oh, so am I. I'm old school like that. Absolutely. Yeah. There's just, not enough of that. There's just, the tech is out of control from the time kids are very young, and it's just a different vibe, right? Than having the television on. Parents had a lot more control over that. It was usually like, one TV that kids would, be tuned into. And now there's lots of tech in the house. And of course, parents are on tech too. We're on tech right now, and it's just a different time. But yeah, old school is nice, right?
I'm with you. I'm an old school cat. I prefer face-to-face conversations. I know we're not exactly face-to-face, but I prefer that. I prefer phone calls. I prefer those type of interactions as opposed to tech interactions. I said this on a previous interview that I feel like tech interactions create a lot of awkwardness in the world because there's just, you can misconstrue what I'm saying or the message I'm trying to convey. And I just feel like face-to-face interactions, old school interactions were the best. I remember just being out with my friends, endless hours, not worrying about what somebody had posted about me or not worrying about what someone had said about me. It was just me and my friends playing baseball, kickball, all those games. until the sun went down and the streetlights came on. And I miss that type of atmosphere. And you brought up a very interesting point about how there was one TV and all those elements. I completely agree with you, because as I was growing up, it was every kid kind of had a similar childhood in the sense of we all watched the same shows. And now it's like there are shows out there that have been on for 15, 20 years that I've never even heard about.
Just so many options now, right? And most kids, they're on YouTube, or some of them, as they shouldn't be, are on social media both really, because they're too young for it, right? But I mean, for YouTube, there are kids shows on YouTube, but there are so many options, and they keep feeding you more and more options, right? But it's up to the parents too, right? Like getting your kid, having your restrictions, and there are just so many options, very different from when you were young, right? Like even when I was on TVO Kids, when I had started, even for many years, right into Gisele's Big Backyard, for many, many years, I mean, this was pre-internet, which was so wild, right? Like pre-internet. So yeah, and also even pre-digital media, digital television. So there, our show was so huge because it was this non-cable television show that parents could access, like just a few stations, a few options of kids television. And there were not many options at all, where now you're right. There's so many, and so many shows I haven't heard of, like what you're saying. Yeah. And it's hard to, weed through them to find out what's really amazing and what's good for your child's brain, what's educational, all that.
Completely. If you give a kid a phone, technically they have a computer, a TV, a stopwatch, the internet. I saw a meme that said, when I was growing up, we had to have dial-up internet. And these kids lose their mind if their internet Google search isn't in 1 to 2 seconds. Whereas for me, I had to hear that annoying and just to get my internet working. And
right.
I remember if we had the internet going, maybe I was doing a school project, whatever. If I had the internet going, there were no phone calls that were coming into the house at that moment in time. That was it. It was the landline that was be used for dial-up. That was it. So certainly interesting times, which can lead to turbulent times. But it's nice to know that there's like-minded individuals like myself, like you, Gisele, who love that old school mentality and are trying to live that out just a little bit longer. We're trying to extract the juice out of that. Even if the whole world is going one way, at least I want to stay in this mentality just for a little bit longer.
And it's interesting because there are so many parents that'll tell me that, who grew up watching me on TV, and they say that what you're saying, they just miss that old school vibe, and they wish their kids can have, to watch the shows that they grew up with. People are very sentimental about it. And I think also just feel that it was good quality television, which is just harder to weed through. I mean, it exists. It's just harder to find, and to get your kids onto the right programming, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, because even like yourself, a lot of your content, I guess that's the term that people use now, right, when they talk about this type of stuff. A lot of your content was educational, education-based. And I just feel like the TV shows now, especially for children in particularly, they're mindless. It's pranks. And don't get me wrong, I'm all into that stuff too. I love that stuff. A healthy balance is needed in life. I'm all for laughing at mindless television, but when the child's mind is at that infantile stage and it needs to intake everything that is beneficial in helping that child learn, you want to be teaching them helpful things, not mindless things. I mean, I can definitely go on this path for a long, long time. I actually, my background is in education. I actually heard an interview of yours where yours is actually in education as well. And the child mind is just so vulnerable at that stage. Children could believe that you could do anything. I could tell a kid that I sleep on the roof, and they'll believe me. And if I tell the tale long enough, they'll then project that onto others. Oh, yeah, so-and-so sleeps on a roof. He has a campfire. He eats only beans, and he boils it over a fire on the roof, blah, blah, blah. Kids' minds are very susceptible to just a lot of different things. So if you're teaching these children, all that you can do now is to do these practical jokes and to just be a prankster. That's all the child wants to do. I remember when I was a kid, you would ask a kid, what do they want to be when they grow up? It was teacher, engineer, doctor, astronaut, policeman, fireman, real careers. Now you ask a kid, you want to know what they say? TikToker, YouTuber, content creator. And that life is fun, don't get me wrong. Maybe I'm being a little hypocritical because that's kind of what I do right now.
Okay.
But the point that I'm making is that
No, there was a lot more variety, right? I mean, there was just there's a lot more variety. And I mean, I believe that there are kids. I mean, I have kids myself. I have 3 kids. And so thankfully, I hear that, they don't seem so interested in being on the camera, or anything. So I feel some gratitude for that. Just because it's just a very challenging world. And also, they're young enough. I do worry about how much social media they're exposed to, and how that can influence them, just because of all of the research done on kids with social media related to anxiety, or anxiety related to social media, right? So I mean, I know that there are many kids who also, there's still the regular, professions to go into. But yeah, there is some concern that there are so many people who see that as like, that's their big inspiration, right? I mean, if there's something educational in it, there's quality to it, for sure. I get it, right? Like if you want to study psychology, and then you want to be online, and then you're a psychologist, and then you have all of you're very educated, and you have all these tips for psychology, and you're helping people, then fantastic, right? But if it's just doing fluff, then and even if you're doing interviews, because you learn from interviews, you do comedy. I think there's so many great things you can find. It's within social media. It's just that what you're saying about, like, just make it something that you gain from it, that it's giving out to people, right? That you're sharing something beautiful and giving to the world, right? And yeah.
You want it to be substantial. You want it to have meat on that bone. You don't want it to just be fluff, as you put it. Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I think we went on a good run there. So let's dive into you as a person.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about your childhood. What was life like for a young Gisele? I know we just talked about old times. Talk about some of those times.
Well, I'd say I was a pretty shy kid when I was very young. A lot of people find that's a hard time believing. They see me as a big extrovert, but I feel like I do have introvert in me. But definitely when I was really young, I was shy. And it was only until around the time I was 11 years old. So, I mean, I was still young at 11. But at 11 years old, I found a lot of my world changed then, by the friends I was with, who were very outgoing. And also that's the first time that I really got interested in becoming an actor. Like, I was very involved. I started getting involved in doing a lot of theater. My curiosity was piqued even when I was younger than that, but I was extremely shy when I first heard about acting, when this Jello, I don't know, these producers for a Jello commercial came to my my elementary school, and when I was in grade 1, and they were looking for actors, children to audition for this commercial, and I was extremely shy, but I was so curious about what does that mean? You could be on television, just I remember just being very intrigued by the thought of that. And I was not asked to audition. I was very quiet and shy. And I was also as brought up in Montreal. And so even though I'm an Anglo-Canadian, I went to a French school. And so also the producers for this Jello commercial were, looking for French speaking kids. And anyway, all that to say is though that's the first time I heard about acting. And then later on, when I was about grade 5 or grade 6 is the time, well, grade 5 really is when I was like, I started wanting to perform.
11 years old was when that light bulb moment of like, hey, maybe I might want to do this as a career.
Yeah,
Really, yeah,
because
yeah.
I was in school and I had to write a play, and then I wrote this play, and then with some friends, we were in a group, and I thought I was just so excited about it. I got so into it. I found costumes for the play. I painted background, big sheets of paper for scenery in the backgrounds. When we talk about a new scene, one of the girls in my group, they would change the scenery in the back. I got so into it. I loved it so much. And the teacher thought it was so great that she asked us to put it on for the kindergarten class in the school. And I remember feeling so much pride in that. And that was the moment that I realized I love this. I loved performing the parts in the play and all of it. Just I don't know, the little costume research that I did, and which is interesting because years later with TVO Kids, when it was the Nook, before Giselle's Big Backyard, it first started off as the Nook. And basically there was an ad in the paper looking for somebody to host this preschool show and to create it from scratch. So the show never existed. And so when I started that, I got the job for this and then was myself and one other person, my other producer / director. And then it was really like YouTube. It was so funny. It was, we had to do everything. There was no union at TVO. So you just did it all. Like I did my own makeup, my own hair. When I would I'd write a scene, and if I needed a prop, and if it didn't exist, I would cut it out of paper. I mean, it was wild. It was a wild time. And even the show was shot with there were 2 cameras. There was like a little switcher, a person in a little audio booth, and they'd press the switch between 2 cameras. And then they could zoom in and out on the cameras. But then it was also the studio was shot out of a closet. So it was not even a real studio. So the lights were really low down, and the shadows were terrible. Everything was so dark, awful shadows. I have blue eyes, and people would tell me in real life, like, oh my God, you have blue eyes. Back then it was everything was so dark. You would never know. It was, yeah.
So it was old school.
Yeah.
Everything looked dingy. Yeah.
Yeah, and we researched I was reading parenting books. I didn't have kids, and there was no internet, so I was buying parenting books and learning about toddlers, what they like, and that's where my that's my research was. Yeah, reading parenting books. It's so funny, and then just using my creativity to come up with little scenarios, and so I wrote it with this Marie McCann was her name anyway. So she was my partner for producing this show from scratch, and she was the my senior producer / director, and I was like the host, writer, producer, and there was just the 2 of us who made this show from scratch, and then it did extremely well. It really blew up. But it was really like creating a YouTube channel. Now, having said that, there was an afternoon show called The Crawl Space. Do you remember The Space or The Crawl Space in the afternoon? So their show was already in existence. So that was very successful. And so the show that I did was in the preschool mornings. And so it kind of, that helped for it to reach, an audience, because a lot of the afternoon show audience were kids who were home after school watching, and often they had, little siblings who would be home in the morning and who would tune in to my show. Yeah.
Yep. So it was in conjunction with one another. Yep.
Yeah.
Nice. I think a lot of people will want to be in these glitz and glamour type of jobs, acting, etc. I don't think you realize that you do have to do a lot of things before that. I remember I used to want to be an actor as well. I've done a couple of TV shows, a couple of small budget films. The point that I'm making is that you do have to put yourself out there in these small productions to get to that point. I remember me and my family, we almost did a makeshift Saturday Night Live where we did little skits. We would tape blankets up, and then that would be our backstage, and then we would go and change into different outfits, come out, do different performances in front of the family. It got to a point where a lot of the family loved it. Like, they wanted it for their birthdays. They would say, for my birthday, I want a show.
I love that.
And it's just, that's what you need to do. And we would try to broadcast it on the TV to make it seem like it was this big thing.
Show.
And yeah. And I think that a lot of people need to do that because, one, it taps into your creativity.
Mm-hmm.
It allows you to try different things, see what feels right, what doesn't feel right, and it just allows you to explore and have fun. So I encourage anybody who wants to get into these type of fields that you do need to go ahead and go through the mud. It's not just going to be you're going to be behind these beautiful lights your first time and somebody's going to go ahead and love you. No, you're going to have to do basement productions, or you're going to have to do closet ones, and that's how it works. You have to do these basement and closet productions. You have to.
Yeah, that's right. And that, and then the more you do it, the better you get. It's like anything, right? The more you do it, it's like, it's practice. So your performance, doing that with your family, right? It's just makes you better and better. And you're perfecting your skills by just doing it, right? You just got to go out and do it, right? And yeah, I mean, I did a lot of community theater, and the Nook was the real, like, my start on TVO Kids was the first time I had like any major experience on television, like speaking on camera. I did a few background things here and there, but really nothing, right? So yeah, I mean, and it was just so wild because we were told to create it. So to create a show from scratch like that, and when you're in control of it, is just so much fun. It's just exactly what you were doing, except for mine happened to air. It was broadcast, right? So, but it was really like a homegrown show.
I just want to say, thank God nothing we did was broadcast. That's all I want to say. I'm kidding. It was all fun. It was all in good nature. We had a good time. The family loved it. Unfortunately, we've all grown up and we're doing other things now, but you never know. Maybe one day we'll do it just for fun on TikTok or something.
I love it. You should. You need to bring it back.
We'll bring it back. Speaking of which, this is a great segue into the next question. From my experience, anytime someone wants to get into certain fields of arts, it's met with some resistance from family. Not in a negative way, in a way of not wanting to see you fail, right? Making sure that you are taking this safe route. How did your family respond when you decided to pursue an acting career?
I gotta say, I was very lucky for that. Very lucky. I never even, really asked. I should ask my parents now, like, what? Yeah, it's just kind of amazing that they were in full support. Now, my dad, he's a huge lover of the arts. Both of my parents, but my dad, he's a professor of electrical engineering, very much a math genius, very different than me in that respect. But he's always loved art himself. And so he's always painted, made oil paintings. And he went to, uh, an art school when he was young. Before he became an engineer. So he's always done art as his passion on the side, painting, visual arts. So in that sense, yeah, he was, very supportive. I think because he loved the arts himself, and they've never once questioned it. I think they also they just knew I loved it so much, and it's funny, it's very different than the parenting these days, even now how I parent myself, truthfully. They were just, I don't know, not so involved in our lives, my sister and my brother and I. Like they somehow they just let us be and figure things out on our own. So there wasn't a lot of pressure. When I did say that I wanted to do acting, I mean, I'm glad. I think I really had to push my mother, but she did find me community acting, theater, and and improv classes when I was a teenager. So she did make a lot of effort to find ways that I can do that because I really loved it so much. So I think, yeah, I lucked out. They were very supportive. And my daughter, my eldest daughter, she's just started university this year, but so right up and from high, all through high school, right up until last year, she graduated from an art school, and she was studying film. And again, for me, of course, I have to support her, especially given my parents supported me and given what I do for a career. And but I also really felt that she should pursue film. Like, she's extremely creative. She's an amazing editor. She's always edited since she was young, with playing with her little My Little Pony characters, her little toys and her pet shop toys. And I always thought, you know what, she's filming she's still playing. She's playing with her toys, and she's using her iPad, our iPad. She would borrow our iPad. She never owned, but she did, to film and edit. So I did support that. I thought, you know what, she's very creative and she's figuring out how to edit. I didn't know how to edit back when she was doing this. So I really felt that, of course I'm going to support her. I felt like she had a real talent, and it's what she wanted to do. So, yeah. So, but a lot of parents, you're right, not everybody's going to be supportive of the arts. I think especially now, because it's just everywhere, right? Everything on camera is everywhere. It's right. Like, it's the social media. That's all art, really. I think when it comes down to it, right? You're there is a sense of performance no matter what. I mean, not always. Some people just, they go on as themselves and let out every emotion or whatever and just talk. But there's still some level of an art to it, I think, right?
Or they dress up in Halloween costumes and go ahead and just put themselves out there. No, you are correct, because there's some social media influencers that their productions are greater than some movie productions.
Yeah.
It appears, from what I see. It's surreal in that regard, and it's crazy how a lot of it is done on their phones here. That's all they do, is they just use their phones. I'm sure there's some that have the high definition cameras, etc. But it's also interesting. You said university. That's right, because you're a Canadian, and Canadians primarily say university, whereas Americans, we primarily say college. I mean,
so sorry.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. No. So, fun fact about Nathanael.
Yeah.
When I was younger, so I grew up in a church, and a lot of our people that we would go to in summer camp were from Canada. And so that's actually how I have exposure.
I was going to say,
show.
how did you have exposure?
Yeah, so that's actually how I have exposure to your show, is because a lot of the friends that I grew up with were Canadian. We would spend the summer with them. We would talk about just TV shows, different things. And just different cultures of what we say, what they say. Like, for example, bag. I think that's something different that some Canadians say. I've heard some say like bagged lunch instead of bagged lunch. I haven't heard this one. I've heard a boot. I've heard some people say that. I've really heard most Canadians say about, but I don't know. But like, for example, like I've heard you say it. You say Montreal instead of Montreal, but that's semantics. You're saying it. It's just the difference of how I say it and how you say it. It's just the way it is. But long story short, I say all this to say I love how Canadians talk. I love their accents. I think it's lovely. I love accents in general. I'm a sucker for accents. But anyways, yeah. So that's how I actually have been exposed to Gisele's Big Backyard, because I actually didn't even know of the Nook. I just knew of Gisele's Big Backyard because I remember I was talking about a TV show, and I don't know if you're familiar with this show or not, but I was talking about Out of the Box. It's a TV show that was on Disney, and they would use these boxes. That would be their world. It was inside the box, but it was really out of the box. Play on words. Nonetheless, it's on Disney Plus if anybody wants to watch it. But I bring all this up to say, I was talking about it when I was younger, and somebody was like, oh, that sounds like Gisele's Big Backyard. And I go, oh, never heard of it. And so I went ahead back then and tried to watch some of it. And back then it was only on grainy little YouTube clips. It's not what it is now. And I remember watching it, and I go, wow, that really is like out of the box. And so that's how come I found an affinity towards Gisele's Big Backyard. So you were making an impact in America, too.
First of all, I am fascinated that you remember how you discovered Giselle's Big Backyard. Okay.
Yep.
And secondly, I love that there's a show that was similar. I never heard of Out of the Box. Now I'm going to want to check it out. And then thirdly, so whereabouts were you brought up?
I was brought up I'm from Massachusetts, and this camp was in Maine. And we would drive up 2.5 hours up. And Canadians would come over to that camp. And again, it's just because it was the church I was brought up in. They had a region in Canada, and they would come over, and it was a teen camp, and it was a bunch of kids that were anywhere from 12 to 16. Obviously, the main point of the church, or it's church, right? So we're talking about God, and we're talking about how to be a good person, etc. Yeah. But when you bond with a bunch of kids, you obviously are talking about things that, and so that's and that's how you got brought up.
Okay, I am just blown away. I feel so Nathanael, I'm just amazed. I'm so flattered that you'd want to talk to me. Just because, this is the first time I ever do an interview with somebody who grew up watching me in the States.
Yes. So and that's another thing. You say the States. I love that. I love when they say that. They would say to me, they would say things like, oh, the States, because you have provinces, right? Like that's the difference of, yes. Yeah.
We don't usually say like, what do you say? You say the U.S.?
Yes. So we just say the U.S. or we say the state. But another thing is, because I remember talking to a bunch of friends at that camp, and I remember them saying, oh, no, Montreal, Quebec, Canada. And so I thought it was interesting because I would say, so that's the equivalent of me saying this town, Massachusetts, United States. And they go, yeah, that's kind of what it is. So I'm very well versed in Canadian culture because of just all my friends. So shout out all my friends. And I'm still good friends with a lot of them to this day.
Really? So
brought
nice.
Us together. Yeah.
Oh, wow. The Canadians, would they know, anybody that that you're friends with that would know the show?
I'd have to reach out to them. One of them, she was the one that I did lose contact with her over the years. She was the one that introduced me to you.
That's so cool. I love that. Well, big hello to her, and please thank you to her. But and I never even knew that. I'm just learning so much. I had no idea that Canadians say the States. Like anyway, it's so funny to me. I didn't know that. But I'm kind of blown away. I knew we had American viewers, because we would receive snail mail and later emails, but for a long time at the start of Gisele's Big Backyard. Incidentally, it did come out, of course, yeah, you knew it when it was Gisele's Big Backyard, because that's when everything was digital, right? Originally, the Nook was just really, in Ontario, we'd have a few, I think, Americans at that time, possibly over the border in Michigan. Oddly, I'd get somebody from maybe New York, but it was only when it went digital, then a lot more parts of the US, a lot more viewers would find our show. I think if they dug deep enough into their remote. But yeah, so that's pretty wild to me. I love hearing this. I'm so excited.
Don't get self-conscious on me, Gisele. You can call us.
I'm always a bit self-conscious. I really am. But now I'm like, did I say Montreal again? Montreal. But yeah.
No, don't get self-conscious on me, because hey, we're basically like your annoying neighbor underneath. We love each other, but we're your annoying neighbor that's like, hey, we're banging on the door. So please.
You're hilarious. No. Not at all. Just go out and vote. Just go vote. No. I'm seeing that everywhere right now on my feeds, right? But
well,
yeah.
I mean, right, it's that time. There's a lot of anxiety with the election, but that's what I love. At the end of the day, I always like to say that I think that there's more that bridges people together than what separates us.
Yeah.
Yes, we might have a different way of how we believe we can get there, but at the end of the day, I think all of us just want a happy, healthy life, because at the end of the day, if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. We want our kids to grow up in a happy, healthy life. How we believe we can get there might vary, might differ, but I think we all want that. I think that's what bridges us, and I think that's what I always try to find common ground in. I think that in some turbulent times, I always like to say, I understand what you're saying. I'm very respectful.
Yeah.
Do you have kids? Do you have a family? You want them to be successful? I want my family to be successful. That's all we want at the end of the day. If we can have that common ground, we have something that ties us together.
Yes.
And that's what I believe. And that's why I love doing this podcast, because we get to meet like-minded people, different people. I get to learn different things, and I get to make people's mind blown with how I discovered them, which is great.
I love that so much. And by the way, I haven't been around Massachusetts aside from Boston, which I absolutely love. Boston. I've been a couple times and I just loved it. So yeah, just on that note of you saying, oh, annoying neighbors, as if I love this. I love the States, the US, there's the parts that I've been to. Yeah, I just love. So there you go. So that's why I'm like, wow, this is very cool that I got to chat with you.
Well, if you ever find yourself in the neck of these woods again, hit me up and we'll go ahead and I'll show you some cool things.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you.
Of course. So we'll get back into Gisele's Big Backyard now. How did you ultimately land that role as the host of your own show?
Oh, well, okay. So I'm like, do I go back a bit? Basically, okay, so I studied theater in school in CEGEP. Now, in Quebec, Canada, such as Montreal, where I was raised, there's something called CEGEP. It's like a preliminary to going to university. I almost want to say CEGEP is college, but then that's confusing to you Americans because it's college before college.
No, it's not. No, because we have community college, which sounds very similar to what you're saying. It's a college that you go to before you go to a college or university.
I think that would make sense. Yeah, and so you could you get credits that go towards your university. Okay, so and it's mandatory in Quebec. That's the only difference too. Maybe is that it is mandatory if you're going to go to university in Quebec and you live in Quebec, you have to go to CEGEP before going to university. Okay. So anyway, so I studied theater in CEGEP, and then And then at that point, I wanted to be an actor. So I moved to Toronto. My grandparents lived in Toronto. So I visited Toronto my whole life, going back and forth between Montreal and Toronto. That's about a 5.5 hour drive, 500 kilometers, if you want to convert that. But that's why I say the hours, just so you know. So it's about a 5.5 hour drive from Toronto to Montreal. Anyway, so I'd visit my grandparents growing up. And then when I finished CEGEP, there are agents that come and watch your final performances, right? You could get picked up from an agent, an acting agent. And in Montreal, the acting community was tiny. And I think there were like 3 agents in Toronto. Like, think about that next to the States or, even Toronto. I mean, Montreal, the acting community was tiny. So yeah, so I did not get an agent. Nobody was interested in taking me on to their roster. And I was devastated, like so upset. And then that summer, I came to Toronto to visit my grandparents and my best friend as a kid. And then basically my best friend that I had a roommate, and he was an actor in Toronto. And so he had encouraged me to meet with his agent. And so he set up a meeting. And then that agent in Toronto said, hey, if you move to Toronto from Montreal in a month, I will take you on. So that's how I moved to Toronto right away. I packed up my bags, moved to Toronto, signed in with this agent, and then I barely went on any auditions, and this agent sucked. Okay, this was not a good agent in so many ways. But yes, she was a bit of a wild card and stuff. But anyway, so yeah, so that's how I moved to Toronto, and then I was doing like so many actors, working in restaurants, then later worked in bars, while I was going on the odd audition. And then, after a couple of years of this, I was starting to really get into a bit of a funk about this career choice. And I just didn't know what to do with my life because I was feeling like it just wasn't going anywhere. And I was starting to stress out about my career choice. So my dad, who was a professor, encouraged me to go back to school. And so I went back to school, nothing to do with acting. I thought, I'd want to be a teacher. And so because I thought, well, what else do I love? And I'm like, well, I love kids. So, maybe I'll be like a kindergarten teacher. And so I went back to school and then to university. And then when I graduated, I was going to go on to teachers college. And because that's what you do post university to become a teacher. And so I graduated, and then there was an ad in the paper. This is like old school, right? There was an ad in the paper looking for somebody to host a preschool TV show and to write the show, to create the show from scratch. And you had to send in a VHS tape, a 2-minute VHS tape, just to show, what makes you think you'd be good for this job. And so I sent in like a 2-minute video of myself drawing on rocks. And and then and then I sent it in, and then I'm kind of condensing the story a bit, but this is pretty much it. I sent in this VHS tape, and they received, apparently I learned later, a few thousand VHS tapes that they watched every one of them. And I was in that pile. And then I was called in to audition. And several times I was called in. So like on the 3rd time, I knew now, well, they must be cutting numbers. There's some interest when you get called back, right? And the more I got called back, I wanted this job more than anything, right? Like that's a dream job for an actor, right? Like it's wild. Like you're handed over, this gift of go and create the show, be in the show, have control over the show, and it's going to be on a very successful children's channel because the afternoon show was already very successful. So it was life changing, and I really wanted it. And then so I got called into audition, and then yeah, and then they called me, and I was over the moon. I threw up. I puked when when they called me and told me I had the job. I was like crying and screaming for my roommates, and I was beside myself. And it really was, yeah, life changing beyond that. Yeah.
That's incredible. I think it ties back into what we said earlier about how you have to do these things in order to get yourself there. And you took some risks, and they were a little scary at times. And I'm sure that there were some people that were not too thrilled, including yourself, hearing just that experience, because I'm well aware of there are some shady agents that are just there for the you know what. And
Oh, I had
they
a shady agent. That's a
Yep.
good word. Yeah, shady. Mhm.
Yep. So I completely understand that, but I'm glad that you were able to get it and that you persevered. I'm glad that you were able to persevere because it helps it helps you. It helps you. You need struggle. You need these challenges to overcome so that way you get the confidence that you can do something. And there are often times where I find in my life where I go through something or I've gone through something maybe, I don't know, 10 years ago, just to throw a number out. And today I'll go through something similar and I go, I feel like I've gone through this and now I can handle it so much better. So I'm glad that you were able to have those experiences because then you were able to navigate of, well, how do I go ahead and put myself out there, maybe detach myself from this shady agent?
Oh, I am such a believer in all what you're saying right now. Like now when I have rejection, I mean, there was so much rejection back then. And when I have rejection, I tell my kids this. I'm like, oh my God, like, I don't get upset. I mean, it's like maybe for a split second, I'm like, oh, and then I'm like, wait a second, this is all good because it's just part of the journey and things are going to get exciting again. Like I have my mindset because of that whole experience. You're right. It just changed everything. And no, and I was really in a funk before, like when I was trying to figure things out. And when I went back to school, I'm like, even then I was like, what am I doing? I'm like, okay, I'll become a kindergarten teacher. And then, I mean, what kind of miracle is it that, and even there's other things that lined up. Like I was dating a guy who's the one who told me about the ad in the paper. He's the one who saw the ad in the paper. It's all crazy. Like, if I wasn't dating that guy, like I never would have known about the ad. And he said, you'd be great for this. You should do this. And so, that gave me the confidence. Even that, like, I was kind of like, I wasn't 100% confident. I did feel like this sounds like an amazing job for me. It's like with kids, I was, already interested. I thought, well, that's the other thing I love are kids. And then I could play these bigger than life characters like theater, because I come from a theater background, right? So you can play these like bigger than life, and I have control over the scripts, and I loved writing my ideas. I loved creating ideas. There were so many things, and even like, yeah, I wasn't completely confident, but when he told me about the ad, I kind of want to prove it to him, and because I always told him, oh, I'm an actor. I'm just going back to school right now, but I studied acting. So I kind of, I wanted to prove to him too that, hey, when I told you I was passionate for acting for all my life, this is what, and I felt like a bit was to prove it to him. It built my confidence, to give it my all for the auditions. And, but just these unusual things that were lined up, that the timing was like right when I finished school. It's so strange, and also they were going to give the job to somebody else, I should add. Like it was between myself and somebody else. I was told this years later from my executive producer that they were going to hire somebody else. I was not like a very typical preschool television host for the time. It was a lot more soft-spoken people who did, were my kind of, for those jobs, like soft-spoken and who had beautiful singing voices and were just very gentle. And I came in like with a lot of energy and like this voice, and I couldn't sing and I had to sing out the audition. And like, that was like so nerve wracking, but I had fun with the song. And so they liked that. They felt like, well, this is great. This woman could show kids that you don't have to be perfect. Like they hired me because I wasn't perfect. All my imperfections worked for what they thought would be good for kids to see. And then, so like when I had to sing the song, like I had a ponytail when I auditioned. And so I was like throwing around my ponytail. I was singing, the Old MacDonald Had a Farm. I just chose a kids song, and I was saying like with the dog, so I was going like with a woof woof here and a woof woof there, like, and I was playing my voice, like doing, just having fun with the song rather than all sing-songy and pretty, and and they liked that vibe. They thought it was refreshing, is what she told me later on, because they didn't want anybody to sound condescending and speak really soft and gentle and all this, just the sing-songy way. And they felt like I was just like talking to them like I was just a lot more direct with the kids and not condescending or something. Anyway, so it worked out for a long time.
I don't know. It sounds to me like you have a great singing voice. I don't know. It sounds like it to me.
That's funny. That's funny. Some people have asked me, "Are you like a singer?" I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "Are you ready to rock like a rock star?" Maybe, but maybe that, but not a nice sing-songy. No, I can't. My voice is unpredictable.
I had to compliment your voice. You complimented mine earlier off camera. Camera, I wanted to compliment yours, and I wanted to, slide it in that you did give me a voice compliment. So there you go.
Oh yeah. I did.
All jokes aside, how does it feel then to be casted for who you truly are? I have been to auditions, and there have been times where I've been told, you are fantastic, but you're not what we're looking for. Whereas for you were literally casted for exactly who you are. They weren't trying to fit a circle peg into a square hole. So how does that feel?
Oh, that's a hard question to answer, because first of all, like they did hire me for who I was. And I think though, when I started, I was having a hard time being myself on camera, because I was always playing a role. So it was always, especially in the beginning, it was, I cringe when I watch the old stuff. Like it makes me sweat just talking about it. But anyway, when I first started, it was hard to find that on camera voice that worked for kids. And then, and to be myself. Right. And so, because it started, I think once that camera was on all the time, it started to change a bit at the beginning. And later, over time, I got more and more comfortable to on camera and be myself. But, it's also myself heightened at my absolute best, right? The Gisele on camera is just, she just, like she's always happy. It's rare to see me, unhappy. So it's just my best self, right? It's my best self. Like, it is the hardest. It is a hard part for me. The best parts were playing the characters, because I played a lot of characters on the show. And for me, so as much as Gisele is kind of a character, but it's me, it's like the best part of me, right? It's a heightened best part. The characters was what I actually enjoyed the most, because I was most confident playing the characters. Me is never, even as a person, I'm not 100% confident. I do get a little bit, that's probably the introvert of me. It's like a bit self-conscious or whatever. And so, and I'm good with a script, but it's a lot harder for me to be without a script. Like even right now, I find I say a lot. I get a bit nervous. I'm going to stop talking because on
no.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. You're doing fantastic. It is very interesting how cyclical life is, in the sense of when you were younger, you were shy and you were a little bit introverted. And like you said, a lot of people would look at you and say, oh, she's got to be this over-the-top character. She's got to be this person that will light up a room. And you do. Yeah, I am enjoying this conversation. But I understand what you're saying, of that there are times where you kind of want to crawl into that hole, even though that's not what you displayed on TV for years. It's just interesting how we can revert back to those tendencies
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
not even realizing it. Not even realize it.
Yeah. Yeah. And but that's it. I think it's like, yeah, definitely it's the most comfortable part for me, is, yeah, when I'm playing characters, it's always a struggle. And to this day, it's just, it can be a bit of a tough, it's a bit tough, right? When you're a preschool television host, because people have a lot of expectations of you. And then, and a lot of people also just want to keep you in that box, into that little
Yeah.
world too. So that also, makes you always a little bit self-conscious, right? Um, in
Well, because now they only know you as that.
Yeah,
And in some aspects, you're right, like all things, there's pros and cons to life. In some aspects that can be a detriment because it could be, well, we don't really know much about your acting portfolio because you've done Giselle's Big Backyard, so you're probably only good with kids, as opposed of not realizing the eclectic spectrum of your skills. So you're right. It is. I can understand that too. It is.
yeah,
It does seem like it could be a bit challenging because it does seem like it could be just again, just it's like us, right? We watch something and we go, "Oh, they're from that movie." And then we can't fathom them in any other role because we only know them as
right.
this person. So you're right. I do understand that. And for you, I'm sure that might have been challenging because it could be, yeah, but look at all that else I can do. I'm not just this character that can be thrown on and wear these crazy costumes and be silly. I actually do have
Yeah.
incredible
And
acting
don't get me wrong, like
skills.
I love children's media, and that's the field I'm still in. I just created an animated series, actually, Giselle's Mashup Adventures. Anyway, I'm a little cartoon character. And so I still in that world. I write for kids programming, but yeah, but I also, it's playing those bigger than life characters that's where I'm most comfortable, what I love the most. And so I want to do more of that, you know, uh, of course, I love meeting people in real life who grew up watching me. I love it so much. I love this whole kids world. And then, at the same time, like, I'm like, I want to explore more and like play characters. So that's something I'd like to do with my social media. I'm starting to think about that, and maybe play some characters, have me on there, but also play some characters, and for my own sake, to enjoy it. But I also know that it comes with the challenge of people who, I don't know, that might not appreciate it the same way if it's not preschool focused. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yep. Well, if you ever need anybody who's a little over the top, kind of funny,
Yeah.
good with kids,
Good voice, great
good
voice,
voice. I don't know. Put some
excellent,
stuff out there.
excellent, excellent costume, purple costume, purple
I don't
headband.
know. I don't know. I can't think of one. But if you ever do, maybe I know somebody.
Thank you. I will definitely keep it in mind.
I, I love to kid. I love to kid. How do you think your time in Giselle's Big Backyard has helped you in your day to day life? Have you learned some skills, even just communicating with other people, management? How has that experience helped you today?
Yeah. Well, I mean, yes, really, like I said, it was life changing in so many ways. I mean, like, first of all, I learned about the kids media industry, right? Because of that experience. It also helped me to become a much better parent. Like, I'd often think, well, how would Gisele from Giselle's Big Backyard deal with this? What would her advice be? What would, like I do the arts and crafts that I did on TV with my own children. So definitely as a parent, I mean, Gisele from Giselle's Big Backyard is a very, high pedestal to compare myself with, in the sense that she, everything was just perfect. And of course I have 3 kids, so there's definitely a lot of frantic moments in there. But yeah, it made me for sure a better parent by just everything that I've learned and then taught about, and about kids, right? I taught kids, what I taught them and what I learned from kids. I'd apply that to my own parenting skills. And then yeah, what else is it? I'm trying to think if there's anything else that it's really taught me. The industry, and just, I think, also just, it was such a blessing. Like, to this day, I meet people who grew up watching me almost every time I'm out in public, who are grown up now. And so I've learned from them of what they're doing with their careers, or just seeing how beautiful humans are and how loving people are. I think there's something about a kids show that triggers emotion in people. So people are really warm and loving. They could have the toughest exterior and just be the most like big teddy bears when I meet people. And so all that, you see how great humanity is. I mean, I'm blessed for all that. So yeah.
That's beautiful. I want to transition now. I believe I saw that you were engaged in a production company called Chuk Chuk. Is that right?
Yeah, that's my own company.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you talk about your company and your involvement in that?
Well, so yeah, I created this company when it was the pandemic, and I decided to have a YouTube channel, a kids YouTube channel at home, similar to what I used to do on the Nook and even Giselle's Big Backyard. Although, in Giselle's Big Backyard, it was a bigger production. So I had little puppet friends in Giselle's Big Backyard. But I played characters, and I had this little educational preschool show that I did during the pandemic while my kids were being homeschooled here. It was pretty wild. And, yeah, and that's when I started my company. And so any kind of work that I do just goes through Chuk Chuk Productions. But so from there, my kids' YouTube channel, that's where I partnered with somebody named Michelle from Head Spinner Productions. And so she and I created and produced an animated series, which was a spin-off series of my kids' YouTube channel. So again, that was my production that merged with her production company for this one series called Giselle's Mashup Adventures. And I'm now going into it. I'm in production of a second season of that, actually pre-production at this point. It's going to air soon on CBC, which is, I'm sure you've heard of. It's Canadian, maybe. I don't know. So yeah, it's a broadcast channel, and they have a streaming channel called CBC Gem. So yeah, that's how my company came about from the pandemic.
Awesome. All right, we're going to wrap up with some burning questions then. Thank you so much for sharing all that fun stuff. All right. Are there any other passions or interests that you have that others might not be aware of, aside from acting, etc.?
I love playing soccer.
You do?
I do.
Nice.
I mean, that's a completely different one. I don't know if everybody would know that. The only thing is like I stopped playing a couple of years ago. I'm getting older now, and the injuries are just too risky. But soccer is something I'm passionate about. That's top of my head. There's probably something else, but yeah. And again, it's always, that's something that people wouldn't know. Otherwise, I'd say, just performing characters, but everybody knows that. So.
No, the soccer one was a good one. That was a good one. And I'm right there with you. I don't play any more men's leagues, anything like that. I've had 3 knee surgeries. I don't need another one. I'm good. Yeah, I'm with you. What is one piece of advice that you would give to an aspiring entertainer?
I would just say to like this generation, I mean, is so blessed. As much as we talked about social media and how, you know, there's so many challenges that come with it. But it's such a blessing for anybody who wants to entertain because you've got this free platform and an audience out there. I mean, I'd say put yourself, I think you have to be on social media. I have a friend who's a musician and he just won't get onto social media. I keep encouraging it. I'm like, all the musicians do it. Like, I feel like, you should. I think it's just a way to go about it. Hones your craft because you're always, it forces you to upload. You have to upload videos, right, to keep your social media going. So it forces you to practice your craft, and the more you practice, the better you'll be. And then it gives you an opportunity to it's like your own marketing, right? It's your own self-marketing. So I think it's fantastic. So I would say that is like the number one is I think you should be on social media.
And constantly post, not be afraid of criticism, not be afraid of
That's
rejection.
it. Yes. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah. Just to just keep, making yourself vulnerable. Just keep going for it. Make yourself vulnerable and go for it. And then usually once you put it out there, I think then you can just breathe a bit because I think it's, but like you took that step. That's the first step, and just to keep going for it. If you want to be entertainer, I think that's the best way these days because, like television is just, I don't think you could go aspire for that. I think you got to just go into social media. That's what everybody does. That's, where the eyeballs are. YouTube is, I include that when I say social media. You got to just put yourself out there just in every way that you can. And it's free. So why not, right? Even look at my situation. I had a kid's YouTube channel during the pandemic, and it had like 2,000 followers. Okay. It was very tiny. And it forced me, I was never on social media before 2020 on any kind. I wasn't on Facebook, even though I'm old, nothing. I wasn't even on LinkedIn. You could not find me. And and then I had 2,000 followers, like tiny. It was not growing. I had no views. I kept at it. It was really hard, to do. I had children at home and I still did it. And I did it on weekends as well. I just kept doing it. I had to learn to edit. I had to learn about YouTube. I had to learn about social media. I had to like Google and research and watch so many YouTube videos on how to do it. And then lo and behold, it was still tiny, but then I get a call from a production company and they want to co-create and co-produce a show with me. Wow. Because they saw how much work and how passionate I was about it. And so Michelle, like as I mentioned before from Head Spinner Productions, she valued all that. And so, yeah, that's where that came from. And that's only because like I put myself, and it took so much. I had to, even the first step, by the way, I should mention this. Am I totally going off? Is this okay that you could cut all this, obviously, edit, like just keep it at hello and you could keep it at, you've got a nice voice, Nathanael, and then you could just get rid of the rest. But anyway, oh no, now I'm going to lose my train of thought. I was going to say, before even, I'd say, even, you want to be an entertainer. I think the number one, I mean, you could go ahead and do that, but if you're like nervous and all that about being vulnerable, I say the number one, what I did was I read books and I listened to podcasts like yours. There you go. On boosting your confidence and pursuing your dreams, all that. I needed that. It was to get onto social media. I was never into social media. I never want to do it. I was afraid of it. I felt it made me feel insecure putting myself out there, all those things. I read books and listened to podcasts and learned about meditation and to keep me cool and chill and whatever. And it was really wild. When I did my first Facebook post, which was announcing my show, that's the only reason I got on Facebook, was 2020, April 1st, 2020. I know the date. And like when I posted it, I cried. That's how much this is me. This, I was on television for 20 years. You might think, oh, wow. So, like, I don't know, extrovert or whatever. No, I cried. I was like shaking. It was a very big deal for me to go and do that. It felt so stressful to me. So that's why I was reading all these books to help boost my confidence and let go of all of that anxiety and to then just go for it. And amazing, because once I did, I'm in a whole other place. Like, yeah, rejection, you don't like it, whatever, you say nasty comment, whatever. I got that. I am good. I'm good. I'm like, I'm moving on, So yeah, and
Motion lotion. Just
yeah,
motion lotion and
usually
keep
always
going.
comes back. That's it. and then I keep trying different avenues to this day. Like I'm always trying to figure things out. What am I doing next? Like, as old as I am, I'm not. Yeah, I'm good now. Like I'm not afraid to try things. I mean, don't get me wrong. I do. There are some little bits of fears, but I'm able to overcome that fear, and I do it anyway. I just keep moving forward, even if, like, I'm like, oh, should I post this? Oh, how's this going to come about, or whatever? I'm like, forget it. I'm posting it. I'm good, and then I feel better. Yeah.
You have to keep plugging away. It's not going to happen overnight, and you can't expect it to just happen. You have to keep plugging away. You have to be willing to take on that rejection. And I love that advice because it's very similar to just anything in life. Just take that first step. Just jump in the water. You might know you can swim. I remember reading that one time, and they said, just jump in that pool. You never know. You could swim. Just take that first step. You never know. You could run. And you never know what you can do. I think humans have amazing potential to do anything they want. And it's on them. And they have to be willing to take that step. So I love that you have a production company, that you are taking these steps. Even now you're realizing it, that you're like, I still have things to work on. I still have things to improve. And I think that's so profound. So thank you so much for sharing that piece of advice, because it sounds to me like you're even taking your own advice, which I love. There are a lot of times people will go ahead and they'll give great advice, but they won't take it. You're taking your own advice, and you're conscious enough and recognize your own flaws. And, hey, I'm not always the best, but once I go ahead and take that step. Like, I hear you saying that you made that first post on Facebook, and I think it's beautiful. I love that you took that step, you took that risk, and sky's the limit for you, my friend. You're going to keep doing great things, so I'm proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you. And you
course.
guys, the younger generation, like, who are brought up with, videos and posting and all that, right? Like, that's where people are lucky too, because often they're so much more familiar with all of everything that goes into social media. Like, I had to like research everything, from scratch, and ask a lot of questions, and then to edit and all those things, use my phone as a camera all the time. All those things, like, a lot of it is more natural, I think, for younger generations. So I feel like there, some of those obstacles, they're like basically they won't be as heavy. And also, if I can do it, if I can, move forward and reinvent myself and take these risks, I feel like, yeah, anybody can, right? Like, I think younger people can. Anyway, that's just an aside. Yeah.
Second piece of advice. I love it. If you could relive one moment from your career, what would it be?
I don't know if there's one moment I would relive. I feel like there, I don't know. I feel like there are many moments I would have relived. I wish I wish I had taken more pictures and videos behind the scenes. I wish I did more of that. Um, uh, but as for reliving, like there's just so much of it. I think like I just loved it. I feel um I don't know, like you wish you could just bottle up certain things, right? Like meeting the kids. I always loved meeting the kids in real life. Like we do stage performances. We did autograph signing, meeting the kids, and I took it in as much as I could in that second. I'd give attention, so much attention to every kid as much as I could because there's always a massive lineup or people, calling my name and I'd try to give that time to the kids. But I also I wish I could go back and like for that, I guess it's just meeting the kids is always the best part. Um, but yeah, even like being in studio, maybe I can't even speak, relive the days in studio as well. Just because there was so much fun, right? It was hard work, but the moments of laughter on set, I mean, that was just so much fun to be with my team, with our crew. And yeah,
So not so much one moment, but if you could put time in a bottle and just keep it there, that's what you
yeah,
would have done.
that's a perfect, see, you're so good. Good voice and good little brain. Big brain.
I, I try. Hey, I'm just that kid that got in trouble and would get the bad grades for talking in class, and now I'm making it a career. That's all.
Oh,
That's
it's
all.
amazing. Good for you. See, it was all
I
practice.
It was. I realized my skills very young, and I was trying to be condensed, and now because of the beauty of social media, I can go ahead and let my wings soar, and that's what it
Amazing.
is.
Good for you.
All right, I got a chat pack for kids. I specifically got the edition for kids
Wow.
because of you, and so
I'm so
it,
flattered.
you should be. If you want to do this in your own kid's way, you can. No, you don't have to. No pressure. No pressure.
Okay. I'm wondering what this
And I,
means, but okay.
in other words, try to do it in a kid's. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, if you had to describe your personality in a sound, what would the sound like? Can I guess? Can I guess? So
Sure.
I think what I took from there was, and I could be completely wrong, but I'm gonna try, was that you can be very frantic, but then you can be settled. And then you can be very frantic, and then you can settle.
That's right. That's
What? Look at so you did good. Look at that. Awesome. You did excellent. I love it. Okay, I'm gonna add this to the screen. Okay, who would win
oh.
in a brutal street fight to the death? Remy from Ratatouille or Stuart Little?
Oh man. I'm gonna go with Stuart Little.
You
Because
think Stuart Little would take him?
he's the underdog? I don't know. Maybe Remy is. I don't even know who's the underdog.
I like that. Stuart Little, he grew up on the streets. Actually, so did Remy. That's a tough one. I like that. All right. I love it. Gisele, thank you so much for joining me today. You are now forever a friend of the show. But you know what? I'm going to do something special for you because I feel like when you do a friend of the show for a kids person, I got you. Ready?
Okay.
There you go. You got to clap. And normally I swear you in, but there you go.
Oh,
You got to clap. So you get both. Where can people find you, follow you, see what you're up to? Plug yourself in.
thank you so much. Okay, so you could find me at Gisele Corinthios on Instagram and on TikTok. So I'm on social media there. So yeah, it's my full name, GISELE CORINTHIOS, big name. And then also, yeah, if you have little kids and you'd like to tune into CBC Gem, if you're Canadian, But also you could find our show on YouTube. So I'm not sure if you can access that, given, we're Canadian. I think you can access it in the States for the most part. If it's not geo-blocked, you know how that exists. But anyway, my show, Gisele's Mashup Adventures, is an animated series for little kids from age 2 to 5 on CBC Gem, and YouTube. You could find it on Head Spinner Kids YouTube channel, which is actually my channel, and it's now called Head Spinner Kids YouTube channel. Yeah, there you go.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, folks, thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Reyes Reflection podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and follow me on those socials at I'm Nathanael Reyes. Make sure you show some love to ARAVE cards, Jocko Fuel, Mad Rabbit, and SMACKIN sunflower seeds. And as always, may you live, may you love, and may you thrive. I'm Oprah, Canadian Oprah, eh? And I love you all.